Djokovic just said her name out loud, and the entire tennis world froze. Stop whatever you are doing right now, because something just happened in the tennis world that nobody saw coming. And once you understand the full weight of it, you will realize this is not just another feel-good story. This is a seismic shift in how the sport's greatest champion is publicly positioning a 20-year-old from the Philippines, and the ripple effects are going to be felt across every court, every locker room, and every WTA boardroom for the rest of this season. Novak Djokovic, the man with 24 Grand Slam titles, the undisputed greatest men's tennis player who has ever lived, stepped in front of cameras and microphones and made it absolutely crystal clear that he sees something extraordinary in Alex Ilya. Not just talent, not just potential, something deeper, something that made him want to share a court with her, speak her name with purpose, and tell the entire watching world exactly what he thinks. And when Novak Djokovic does that, the entire watching world pays attention. Now, before we get into exactly what was said and why it carries the weight that it does, we need to establish something important. This story did not begin at a single press conference. It did not emerge from one spontaneous comment made in passing. There is a foundation here that has been building since the very first week of 2026. There is a history, and once you understand that history, the significance of Djokovic going on the record about Ilya does not just make sense. It becomes inevitable. When Ilya made her main draw debut at the Australian Open in January, her presence created scenes so extraordinary that even Djokovic took specific notice, publicly acknowledging in a press conference following his second-round win that the attention surrounding her was entirely understandable, describing her as the biggest tennis player ever to come from the Philippines and recognizing that her country represents a massive, newly engaged fan base for the sport. Phil Starr, he did not have to say that. Nobody asked him to evaluate a WTA player ranked outside the top 50. He volunteered that assessment because what he witnessed in Melbourne was genuinely striking. The Filipino fans who flooded Melbourne Park for Ilya's opening match created logistical chaos that tournament organizers had not anticipated, and Djokovic's response was not irritation or dismissal but rather a firm, public declaration that overflowing crowds at a tennis tournament represent a very good problem to have. The Manila Times. Think about what it means for Novak Djokovic to be the one making that argument. This is a man who has competed in front of packed houses at the most celebrated arenas in the world for 2 decades. He has played finals at Rod Laver Arena, Center Court, Court Philippe Chatrier, and Arthur Ashe Stadium with the entire planet watching. He has experienced the full spectrum of what crowd energy can do to a tennis match. And his reaction to the unprecedented Filipino fan mobilization around Ilya was not concern about disruption or noise. It was enthusiasm. It was recognition. It was the kind of response you give when you understand that what you are watching represents the future of the sport. Djokovic stated explicitly that every tournament seeks record-breaking attendance and ticket sales, and that the phenomenon building around Ilya was exactly the kind of growth signal the tennis world should embrace rather than manage with apprehension. Phil Starr life. But here is where this story shifts from heartwarming to genuinely historic. Because Djokovic's relationship with the idea of Ilya has evolved far beyond a press conference observation. The transcript of his most recent comments captures something that goes to the heart of why champions recognize each other. He described being blown away by watching Ilya compete. Not impressed. Not pleasantly surprised. Blown away. That language coming from Novak Djokovic is extraordinary. This is a man who has shared a practice court with every elite player on the men's tour for 20 years. His standard for what constitutes impressive athletic performance is set at a level that most professional players never reach in their entire careers. And he used the phrase blown away. Twice. Deliberately. About a 20-year-old Filipino woman fighting her way through a WTA draw on a path that nobody had fully mapped out for her yet. He went even further. He said she is actually good. Now, on paper, that might sound like faint praise. But parse those 2 words carefully in their context. This is a man for whom the word good carries approximately 40 times the weight it carries when anyone else says it. When Djokovic says a tennis player is actually good after spending real time watching them compete and move and strike the ball, he is applying a standard forged through decades of facing the absolute best the sport has ever produced. He is saying the fundamentals are there. The athleticism is real. The competitive instincts are genuine. He is saying she belongs. Djokovic noted at the Australian Open that the scheduling decision to put Ila on a small court was arguably a poor one given the scale of fan interest surrounding her, essentially calling on tournament to acknowledge what she represents and respond with the infrastructure her status deserves. Inquirer.net. That was Djokovic going to bat for Ila not just with compliments but with institutional criticism. Not many voices in tennis carry enough weight to publicly question how a Grand Slam schedules its matches. Djokovic is one of perhaps 3 people on Earth who can say that and have it land as a serious demand rather than a polite suggestion. Then came the moment that sent the entire tennis community into a spin. Djokovic expressed his desire to play mixed doubles with Alex Ila. Let that breathe for a moment. The greatest champion in tennis history, a player who rarely commits to doubles of any kind and who has made precious few mixed doubles appearances across an entire career of extraordinary length, specifically named Alex Ila as someone he would love to share court with as a partner. This is not the language of obligation or tournament scheduling logistics. This is the language of genuine enthusiasm from a competitor who has looked at another athlete and seen something that excites him. And the fact that it came in response to Ila herself expressing admiration for Djokovic and her desire to play alongside him makes the symmetry of it almost poetic. She had already put the idea into the world before he confirmed it publicly. She had said, in her own gracious and quietly confident way, that sharing a court with Novak Djokovic would be one of the most extraordinary experiences of her tennis life. She did not demand it. She did not campaign for it. She expressed it with the kind of sincere admiration that can only come from someone who genuinely loves this sport and understands what greatness looks like when it is standing in the same room. And Djokovic heard her, not metaphorically. He heard her, he considered it, and he walked to a microphone and told the world he was in. Ila and Djokovic have previously shared court time together at the Australian Open, a moment that clearly left an impression that extended well beyond a casual encounter. Rappler, there is a difference between watching someone play on television and being on the same surface as them, feeling the pace they generate and the control they maintain under real conditions. Djokovic has had that direct experience with Ila, and his subsequent enthusiasm for her game carries the credibility that only comes from first-hand assessment. When he calls her an incredible athlete who is carving out her place in the WTA for all the right reasons, he is not reading from a press release or repeating something he heard from someone else. He is telling you what he saw with his own eyes and felt on his own side of the court. And the support surrounding Ila at this level of the tennis world does not begin and end with Djokovic. It extends through an extraordinary roster of the sport's most respected voices. Rafael Nadal, the man who turned clay court tennis into a personal art form and whose academy in Mallorca is the very institution that helped shape Ila's development, has been a consistent source of encouragement throughout her journey. Jessica Pegula, one of the most grounded and analytically sharp players on the WTA Tour, has made clear that no one paying serious attention to women's tennis can overlook the potential Ila is bringing to the circuit week after week. Former world number 1 Kim Clijsters, a player whose career combined elite talent with the kind of personal character that defines a champion beyond just titles and trophies, has spoken with deep admiration about the exceptional dedication that forms the true foundation beneath all of Ila's recent success. When you have Djokovic, Nadal, Pegula, and Clijsters all independently pointing in the same direction, you are not looking at a publicity campaign. You are looking at the tennis world recognizing something genuinely real and refusing to stay quiet about it. These are not people who lavish praise casually. These are people who have spent careers in a sport that rewards only what is actually earned. Their consensus about Ila says more than any ranking or any tournament result could. Djokovic, who recently revealed his intention to retire at the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, is clearly in a phase of his career where he is thinking about legacy in its broadest sense, the big lead, about what he leaves behind, about which moments and which partnerships will define how this chapter of the sport is remembered. Choosing to publicly align himself with Ila at this particular moment in her ascent is not incidental. It is deliberate. He is lending the full weight of everything he has built across 3 decades of elite competition to a young woman who is in the middle of writing the most compelling chapter in Filipino sports history. The pressure that comes with that kind of visibility is not small. Elo is carrying the hopes and emotional investment of an entire nation across every match she plays, across every tournament she enters, across every moment when the cameras find the Filipino flags in the crowd. And the question becomes not just whether she wins, but what she represents for a country that has waited decades for a moment exactly like this one. You are genuinely missing out on the biggest story in tennis right now. Subscribe, turn on your notifications, because this story is moving faster than any ranking list can keep up with, and we are covering every single chapter as it unfolds.